We are so thrilled to be partnering with Hinge. Hinge is the dating app designed to be deleted. As you all know, I'm a huge Hinge advocate as I met my partner of almost 3 years on the app. Even before meeting him, Hinge was always my go-to app because I met more relationship-minded people here and had some great dates. Clearly, I haven't been on the app for a little while, but I re-downloaded it to check out some of the new features. One that stood out to me was the voice prompt, my best friend's take on why you should date me, where your friend can hype you up. Not only does this make the profile creation less daunting, but it's not always easy to see your own green flags. So to test it out, I asked Yue some fun prompts to get her take on what I could put if I was dating again. So the first one, how long have we known each other? What was your first impression of me and how has that changed?
Julie and I have known each other for almost 10 years. My first impression of Julie was that she's very social, but I've learned that she has a lot more depth to her beyond the social butterfly that she is.
My next prompt, what do you think are my green flags?
I would say she's deeply loyal. She believes in love, curious mindset, and she is fearlessly ambitious.
And then last but not least, what kind of friend am I?
Julie is the kind of friend who will always have your back, no matter what.
Damn, that feels nice to hear. So download Hinge and try voice prompts today. Then find someone worth deleting the app for.
The Dateable podcast is an insider's look into modern dating that the Huffington Post calls one of the top 10 podcasts about love and sex. On each episode, we'll talk to real daters about everything from sex parties to sex droughts, date fails to diaper fetishes, and first moves to first loves. I'm your host, Yue Xu, former dating coach turned dating sociologist. You'll also hear from my co-host and producer, Julie Krafchick, as we explore this crazy dateable world. Hello, lovely people. Welcome to another episode of the DATEABLE podcast, where we dig into the ins and outs of modern dating and how we can navigate through all of this together. We're in this together. Damn it.
Yes. And how relationships change. That is the core of what we're talking about today. How our standards, how our desires, how everything of what we seek in a romantic partner and what a romantic partnership means to us. Maybe that's not evident by the title of this episode, but that is the core of what we're talking about. And we're really excited about this episode because there was this article that was circulating. It was in August 9th to be exact. I had to look back on our Facebook group too, because I remember this got posted there first. I always love our Facebook group to be the source of the new stuff.
Breaking news.
But then I saw it everywhere. I don't know about you, Yue. I saw so many like influencers, podcast hosts, just circulation of this article, what's behind the rise of lonely single men. And we felt that we needed to get the author on this podcast so we could dive into it much more than this article.
He received a lot of backlash for this article, and it's really for the title. I think people were saying, well, he's calling for lonely men to step up. How can he be so insensitive? I mean, there was just a lot of controversy around this article. So we thought we'd just bring him on the show instead of reading the controversy. Let's see why he wrote the article.
You know, I did see some influencers, podcast hosts, men specifically, get defensive, but I actually was really proud of how people in our Facebook group took it. And men themselves commented. I think it just speaks to the type of men that are in our community. And I sometimes actually forget like the wider circle of men out there, because I feel like we're blessed that we attract people that are doing this work, are emotionally intelligent. And, you know, I think that ultimately is the call out in this. It's Dr. Greg Matos is who we're talking to today. And he talks about how men need to address their deficits to meet healthier relationship expectations. And he basically talks about, we're going to get into all of this in much more detail, but like dating opportunities, these are kind of his key points. Dating opportunities for heterosexual men are diminishing as relationship standards rise. Men represent 62% of dating app users, lowering their chances of matches. And then men need to address skill deficits to meet healthier relationship expectations. It's a lot to take in.
I mean, that's the thing, right? I think this is why this article got so much backlash, is like, who are you putting the responsibility on? Who is responsible for the rise of lonely single men? And we will discuss this, but, you know, personally for me, seeing and speaking to some of my single guy friends, a lot of them have really given up on love. They've given up on dating. They kind of feel like, you know what? If it happens for me, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it's just so depressing to hear because I know they're great men and they have so much love to give. But something about the state we're in right now is not building people up for success. So we need to dig into like the root cause. What is a societal cause before we let this go down a really bad rabbit hole?
I think that's fundamentally what's happening across the board. And like we've talked about this before, that we are in a love crisis. We need to save modern dating. And yeah, I think it's men feeling this way, but I think it's women. I think it's people that identify as trans or non-binary. I feel like it's across the board. It's just society as a whole. I think with hetero relationships, maybe it's showing up more. And correct me if I'm wrong. If other people have different opinions, love to do an episode on that in the future. But for this conversation, it's definitely geared more to hetero relationships. And I see it in our community. I see it with the people we talk to. Everyone is being down on love this day and age.
Yeah.
And in some way, it's really beautiful because it comes from a place of wanting more. Like we know we can have it. And, you know, there was a quote actually that was in our Facebook group that was just like, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it was kind of like, were our grandparents' relationships like the model that we're actually striving for, especially for women? A lot of times your worth was like, what can you do in the kitchen? Or maybe your husband was cheating on you and you never stated your needs. And I'm really happy that we're moving out of that like, this isn't what a relationship means anymore. We don't need a relationship for survival. But what comes with that is that we have these expectations, and we talk about this in the episode, that the differences of women and men, the way we're socialized, the way society portrays success, the way just everything about our upbringing is different. And we want more equality, which is great. But we're in this growing pain right now of how do we get to that stage? And where we are, in my opinion, is women wanting more and men not knowing how to get there. So it's just leaving both people discouraged, confused, and almost this sense of feeling like, let me just give up.
It's because we look at dating in such a men versus women type of way that we forget that we're all connected. If the men are hurting, women are hurting too. We can't be like, oh, well, we're surpassing you, so fuck you, buddy. We have to think about this more like we are connected to each other. And one of the reasons why we call ourselves dating sociologists is because it's fascinating just observing the societal shifts in dating. It's not just like the day-to-day of what you are all experiencing. Yeah. It's looking at the big picture of what's happening in society. And when we started this podcast 7 years ago, we used to get emails on the daily of people telling us their funny dating stories. That was the thing 7 years ago. Oh my God, can you believe what happened to me on this date? Can you believe what this person said? Can you believe this? Guess what? We're not really getting those anymore because telling funny dating stories doesn't really move the needle for people anymore. They're not entertaining anymore. Like there's nothing that shocking out there anymore. But the emails we do get and the interaction we do get are people asking the question, how do I find love and why does it even matter? Why does it even matter for me? So we hope to answer these questions, not just in this episode, but on our podcast. Let's really get to the why of why we're doing this. Why are we dating? Why are we trying to find love? We need to find that why.
And I feel like if you're listening to this episode, you're already ahead of the game with her.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a hetero man is kind of the, target of at least this article. And, I think women, there might be frustration here, but in general, just listening to this episode means that we're on the right path of how do we come to a resolution. I want to read like a few comments we got in our Facebook group because it's always fun to do this. And I am just constantly impressed by the caliber of people. And I really fundamentally believe if you can be at that standard, you attract other people at that standard.
And this is in response to the article.
Yes, in response to the article. So we had from Eric, I'm glad to see women demanding more from men. I only wonder how many men will actually up their game in response. That is what we're trying to say here is we want more. We want fulfilling partnerships. We believe that men also want these fulfilling partnerships. Like, how do we actually work together to do this? You know, Janice, our moderator, replied back saying that she's raising her child to have these emotionally challenging conversations. Her son, she said, it's work for him and for me, but damn it, some Gen Z woman will benefit from our effort.
Yes, that is true.
So then we also had a comment from David. He said, laugh out loud. He quoted the article. Dating opportunities for heterosexual men are diminishing as healthy relationship standards increase. Reflects very poorly on the way our society raises straight men, and totally rings true. I'm glad standards are increasing, and I hope men seek out resources to learn to do better.
Good. Great.
And then the last one I'll read. I mean, there's so many good ones. And I really do applaud like the men in our community for not getting defensive on this. I think I'm still glad it reached the men that did get defensive because I think eventually it'll seep in. But the fact that like people aren't responding in a defensive way, it means that evolution's already happening for you.
So much growth in that.
Yeah. So then Brian wrote, as has already been stated, men need to bring more to the table. More and more, today's relationships should be partnerships where both parties are equals. In general, men fall behind in areas such as emotional intelligence. There are so many resources out there that men can learn from, but many men don't want to put in the work to be better. And then just the very last one I'll read from a woman's perspective. And I mean, there's so many, but from Ellen, it's true. In this era where a woman can earn her own money, she doesn't need a man. She must be presented with a reason to want one. And I think that is the mentality. And Janice also commented on this, that it's not need in a bad way. Like, we don't need children. We don't need a dog. We don't need whatever. It's ultimately you want to find something you want. And what women are desiring is that equal, is that person that's going to step up and treat them as a person. I think in some of the past eras, it was very one-sided. It was very unequal. Like, you were almost like the one doing all the household labor. Like, there was just so much that was wrong that we're trying to correct in today's world. So I think net, this really is a good thing that people are trying to rise higher.
Well, I would say I think that there are a lot of men working hard. We just don't see it. And, you know, something we should really commend the men who are working hard is thank you for doing the work, and also just keep us in the loop, keep us updated. You know, I know so many men who are like, I'm not going to date or put myself out there until I finish working on myself, until I finish my therapy sessions. But what we're asking is, we want to be with you, alongside you for the ride, for the journey. We want to see your growth. Don't come to us with a perfect package, because nobody is. But let's grow together.
And women need to step up too. I'm going to relate this back to my favorite show.
Yes, we do.
Fuckboy Island. Fuckboy Island is nice guys and self-proclaimed fuckboys. And how many women on that show dismiss the nice guys, saying that they're not interesting enough. They blend in. They're not aggressive enough or pursuant enough. And they go for fuckboys time and time again. So if we're the ones saying we want to do better, we also need to reflect that in our choices. And that might change the qualities we're looking for. That show is like prime social experiment of what we say and what we do as being different, and
so different.
Things that we think are desirable traits of a partner that's ingrained in society that really do actually impact who we end up choosing. We have so many women, even in real life, outside of Fuckboy Island, that we talk to that are with these guys that are like just not treating them well. And there's so many of these guys out there that are, and it's like, it's up to us to also find the people that are doing this work and are stepping up.
Yeah, it's positive reinforcement, and we can't keep reinforcing the fuckboy attitude. It's in our choices, but it's also in the way we speak about men too. You know, I spoke with a girlfriend of mine, and she's dating, and she's dating this guy who's super consistent and respectful and communicative, and she's yearning for that game playing. She's like, he's boring because there's no cat and mouse. But then when someone does the game playing, she says, then I say I'm too old for this shit. So I'm like, watch the way you're speaking about people and which bucket you're putting them into, because she's calling this guy boring because he's actually actually doing all the right things, that is on you, girl.
He's emotionally available is what it sounds like. Yeah, it sounds like this guy is a prime partner, someone who is ready to be in that equal partnership.
And if you're not ready for that, like hand him over to someone else who is. You know?
Someone's listening right now is like, sign me up. I'm in the LA area. I'm ready.
Yeah. If you are still in the game playing, go for that, right? Leave the nice guys who've grown, leave them out of this. Okay. Like give them to people who are ready for them. But it's just like we also need to just watch the way we speak about men.
Yeah. And not to toot our own horn, but I do
tooting.
But I am. But I think like podcasting in general, not just us in general, I believe that is a path forward because it's made this type of work more accessible. You don't have to go to a therapist. I'm not saying you shouldn't go to a therapist too. Absolutely. But some of that's out of reach for people financially. It is more of a push to like get there. Even buying a self-help book, for instance, feels like it could be more of a process. And I think more and more men are doing this too. But we know historically women are more of the target audience there as well. But podcasting has allowed for open conversation with a really low barrier, essentially.
Yes. Proud of us.
That being said, we will get into the podcast that we are going to go deep into this. It's such a great conversation. And we're so glad we were able to unpack it with Dr. Greg Matos. Before we get into it, at Dateable Podcast is us on Instagram. Come over there. You get to see all of our videos. You get to see our guests. People always say, I wish I knew what these guests look like. Well, there's a really easy way to find out. So follow us on Instagram, TikTok. We're building up our TikTok. And then Love in the Time of Corona is our Facebook group. You can join us there as well. Before we get into it, let's hear a message from our sponsor.
Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. Do you ever feel like you're dwelling on something? I remember I used to dwell about dates that went nowhere and wondering what happened. But now looking back on it, I wish I could have focused more on solutions to help me move forward. It can be tough to train your brain to stay in problem-solving mode. But when you learn how to find your own solutions, there's no better feeling. A therapist can help you become a better problem solver, making it easier to accomplish your goals, no matter how big or small. My BetterHelp therapist helps guide me through frameworks of problem solving, which I love because I would much rather someone lead me to the answers than just tell me what to do. It has been so healing to speak with someone who genuinely cares about my well-being, and I feel like I'm in good hands with a professional. If you're thinking about giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, accessible, affordable, and entirely online. Just fill out a brief survey and you'll be matched with a therapist. When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/dateable today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DATEABLE.
Okay, let's hear it from Dr. Greg Matos.
Okay, Greg, you've created quite a splash in our Facebook group, so we felt like we really needed to reach out to you and talk to you about this article that's been circulating so much, not just amongst daters. I've actually had some married friends send this to me as well, and with the caveat of saying, I'm so glad I'm not dating right now. So who is this man that's causing such a splash? His name is Dr. Greg Matos. He's 39 years old, lives in LA, originally from Bristol, Rhode Island. I've never met someone from Bristol before, and single and actively going on dates. He's an individual and couples therapist and the founder of A Better Love Project, a public media company that promotes healthy relationships and helps people love better from the start. And the article that he recently wrote in Psychology Today is called The Rise of Lonely Single Men. That's been shared a gajillion times.
Yeah. When we saw this, we were like, we need to get Greg on this podcast ASAP. So we're so glad that we were able to make it happen.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here. And as someone who has just only started a show, to be with two champions here at like season 15 is amazing. So thanks for having me.
Welcome. What does your shirt say? I just noticed there's words on it.
The hoodie, which any of your listeners can pick up, by the way, this is merch for A Better Love Project, says, love each other fiercely.
I love that.
And I get to walk the boardwalk here in Venice Beach with it on as it gets cooler here in LA in the mornings and evenings.
I know. We're heading into winter season.
That is some good marketing. Caught our attention.
Thank you.
I like that it's two-way. Love each other fiercely.
Yes.
And not just love fiercely, holds each other accountable a little bit. It also creates that relational awareness. But back to the article, Greg. See, I'm just promoting everything that you're doing now. What made you write this article, The Rise of Lonely Single Men?
Yeah, I mean, two things. Primarily, the first being that I spent the last year building a Better Love Project, which is my 501c3 charity. And we're literally a TikTok charity. We're at a Better Love Project. We have over 40,000 followers there on TikTok and YouTube and elsewhere. And I basically was spending a lot of time with women, which is not new for me. I grew up with a home with 5 older sisters and an amazing mom and dad as well. But I spent a lot of time listening to my audience, which I'm sure you do often because we care about our audience. We're actually invested in our audience well-being and our listeners' well-being. And the women who I was speaking to were around my age. So we're talking, 25 to 35. I'm a little older than that right now, but that's our demo age range. And women, mostly women who are either single, women who were in relationships where they're lacking emotional connection, or folks who had, like me, been married, divorced, and who were dating again. So people at all the ranges of relationships you can be in were all telling me the same thing, which again is nothing new, which is why I'm surprising that it went viral. Because listen, ask any one of your audience members, and I did not say anything surprising, all right? But apparently it was shocking. And then apparently also it angered a lot of mostly single white men who were like harassing me and telling me I was all sorts of other things. I hope for their sake that they actually read my article.
Yeah, it's the people that you need to read it, of course. So are you seeing this, mostly with hetero men, or is it across the gamut?
Most of my audience members, I mean, this is really what it's at. And TikTok, like I said, hundreds of audience members who I've spoken to over the last year on TikTok, most of them in heterosexual relationships. We know that love, true love, fierce love, a healthy love has absolutely nothing to do with sexual orientation or gender expression or any of those things, those social constructs. But when it comes down to it, heterosexual men specifically, my brothers out there who I have a deep well of compassion for, are struggling in being able to dream with the people they're dating and the people that they're getting married to, and being able to satisfy them and themselves, even though they don't understand that yet, but satisfy themselves, be happier, healthier, and have a more emotionally rich existence if they just focus on a few life skills that I teach at a Better Love Project, by the way, for free.
Nice. Very kind of you. Now, the reason why your article was shared so much in our community, but also just in so many other communities too, is the title. I actually feel like a lot of people didn't even read through the entire article before they hit the share button. That title is probably quite triggering for some people, like the men who've been harassing you. Can you put it in your own words for those people who did not read through the entire article before they shared what the article is about?
So I'm guessing that your audience members are out there looking for the love of their life. Maybe they believe that there are multiple loves that they could have. Who knows? That's what I believe, by the way. But whoever you are and whatever you're doing, married or not, if you look at the relationship landscape right now and you see what dating looks like right now, and I'm sure you know a lot more about it than I do. I'm almost certain of it after 15 seasons. But if you look at the landscape, the one key thing that really got me going here in writing this article was the fact that if you look at online dating, if you look at dating apps specifically, most women that I have spoken to through TikTok and elsewhere are either fed up, overwhelmed, exhausted by the whole fucking thing. Mm-hmm. And the primary reason, I think, is that 62%, 64% of app users are men. Most folks on the apps, heterosexual, most seeking heterosexual relationships. Not enough men that the women want, but many men who are seeking relationships. And if you don't know how to establish emotional connection via text message, for instance, which is a very soft skill, very key skill, then you're going to lose the game from the get-go. I mean, I didn't go into that detail, but bottom line, women in general, heterosexual women in general, I'll say this loud and clear because this is the most important point, healthy relationship standards for that group of human beings is rising, and they're able to exist in a happy state of bliss single much longer than men, including me, can. And what we know is that one of the things that most of these folks are looking for is a more emotionally rich, connected relationship with someone who can effectively communicate with them. And there's nothing new about what I'm saying, but right. I'm saying it.
Well, we definitely are going to dive into the more specifics, but I'm curious before we do that, like your own experience. I know you've observed all these people. Like, is this something that you've struggled with and had to learn to overcome? Or do you feel like these skills have come naturally to you?
The skills. Okay, here we go. We're getting into it, ladies and gentlemen. The one inclination I have as a psychologist is like never self-disclose, right? So I'm getting over it with you right here on the Dateable podcast.
It's history.
Making it right now. I mentioned to you before, I grew up in a large family. It was a large Portuguese family, very traditional gender roles, very traditional cultural norms around emotional expression and restrictions around all that stuff. Just normal shit that all of these guys who I'm trying to talk to out there, and also in my clinical practice, which luckily, I have their ear and so they actually listen to me. But in general, to understand that this stuff doesn't actually come naturally, right? It's not something we're going to just fucking absorb from our organic existence in our cultures of origin. It's not going to happen. We have to learn it from somebody. And if we don't have examples of men like that in our existence who are able to communicate with affection and intimacy and all these other things, how are we going to figure it out? Hopefully you come to therapy with me or someone like me. Anywhere in the world, if you can access somebody so you can sit down and learn these skills. It doesn't take long. I'm not talking about fucking years of therapy. I'm talking about maybe 8 sessions to figure out some soft skills. So to answer your question, no, it doesn't come naturally. Believe me, ask my sisters. I might be more emotionally expressive than my sisters are. You have to ask them that question. But I learned this stuff in part because I became a psychologist. And in order to do my work, I have to be able to do that. I have to be able to emotionally attune to my clients. And so they didn't also teach me that in the Marine Corps, because I served 4 years in the Marine Corps and I served in combat and I did a lot of things. And they don't teach you vulnerability in the Marine Corps, but I could tell you they do when you are becoming a psychologist in Boston. I learned those skills becoming what I am today and what I do today and what my passion is today, which is just to help people love each other more fiercely.
Thank you for your service, because it's very much needed in today's world. We feel like we're headed into a love crisis or a love deficit where people may want to love, they want to feel the love, but they don't know how to love or how to even show that love. And something you said that brings up a lot for me is the fact that this culture, at least the US culture, the way we idolize people is just so wrong. We idolize, in terms of hetero men, we put these men on a pedestal where, like an Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, where they don't give a shit about their families. All they're doing is making money and maybe disrupting the industry. And then for the women, we idolize women who don't need no men, who got their degrees, who got their shit together, they're CEOs, they're girl bosses or whatever. They're like doing everything. And those are the women we idolize. And these two characters that we're idolizing are opposing characters. Do we not see that? The men are not family people and the women don't need men. So you believe that the younger and middle-aged men are the loneliest they've been in generations, and you think it's going to get worse. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you already laid it out. Thank you for laying that out so beautifully. No, I mean, listen, there's an opportunity here. Let me speak to the opportunity and try to answer your question at the same time. I don't know if I'll be good enough to do it, but the opportunity here is Gen Z, okay? The millennials, are you all millennial? I'm a millennial. I'm an elder millennial.
We're elders
very
as
elder.
well.
Okay.
Yes.
But listen, everybody, millennials this, millennials that, we're basically saving the world right now. So everybody calm down, all right?
We've learned how bad it could be, right? And that's why we're saving the world.
Yes. We are the bridge.
We are the bridge
to something beautiful here. And I think it's Gen Z, to be honest with you, and everyone after. Now, listen, I don't have a child yet, although I hope to be a good dad someday. But my oldest niece, who's 30, just had her first child in the UK. And I think about her, my great niece now, and I think like, what is the existence in this world that I'm going to leave for her? And talk about role models. I don't look at any of those people you mentioned as a role model, FYI. I think about the highest virtue that I have, which is love. And what is Gen Z doing now that's maybe will fuck them up, but also could save the world? They're like less intimate, less connected, less in the college years. I've been talking about that in psychology days. And you mentioned this, there's an intimacy gap. There's all these things. But if we millennials and everyone after us, specifically Gen Z, can really get their act together with this emotional connection thing, I think the opportunity exists for us to actually achieve more intimacy, more connection, and the kind of love that we all want to experience, which is a fierce, healthy love and a secure attachment with someone who adores us and like wants to champion our dreams. And we know that these relationships already exist. John and Julie Gottman have 50 years of scientific research to suggest the master structures of long-term relationships work. I'm just hoping more of your audience members meet those people as they're dating.
So what's really fascinating, and I definitely want to go in more depth, but Yue kind of alluded to this, that the society, the way it's projecting certain archetypes. And I would argue that it's women too, like less and less emphasis on relationships and more about building own identity is what we've seen portrayed. I guess from your perspective, like, why do you think this is detrimental? And we really do need to prioritize love and love each other fiercely.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with the statement you've just made. And I was recently doing a interview with a reporter in Sweden who was talking to me something around this, what you're talking about, which is like, what happens actually? We're not there, by the way. We're not fucking in there.
We're not there
We're
yet.
not anywhere near there.
That's why we need
Ladies
this
and gentlemen,
convo
holy
now.
smoke,
This is why
right?
we need the convo now to get ahead of it.
Yeah, but she was saying to me, well, what happens if you do experience some level of gender equality in a romantic relationship, on a date, et cetera, et cetera? Now, who is the one pursuing, who's the whatever, right? We're not there yet.
Just more like, why is love even important? Because our society is, de-emphasizing it. And I think it's not just men, it's women also.
So one of the reasons, if you look at the data in terms of college age daters, and you see the intimacy and the frequency of dating and sexual intimacy and all this stuff go down, one of the things that sociologists are pointing to, as you're mentioning, are these norms around prioritization of other values, away from marriage, away from yada, yada, more toward financial freedom, and of course, becoming, queens. I'm all about women being the best existing version of themselves. Because if men are the best versions of ourselves, we can figure that shit out.
Right.
Has the pendulum swung too far? Is that what you're suggesting? I don't think so. I think the fucking pendulum needs to swing harder, that there's an actual consistent shift in gender norms. We're not there yet. The fucking tipping point hasn't been in America. I can tell you for sure. And if you look at the Middle East and other places, you definitely have fucking problems.
Right.
Here's another way to think about this question too, but I'm curious what you think of this. We do have a lot of male listeners who've told us they've given up on dating. This is it. I'm in my late 30s or I'm in my 40s. It hasn't worked out for me. I'm just going to sit back and see what happens. If it doesn't happen for me, it doesn't happen for me. We've actually heard many women say this too, but in a much more combative tone. But the point of this is a lot of people are giving up on love and relationships, thinking that maybe I shouldn't try as hard and I wouldn't have all these headaches that I have with modern dating. What is your response to that?
Dating and relationships comes down to the most important element of anything I've ever taught or spoken about when it comes to relationships, which is creating shared meaning. And creating shared meanings comes from a deep understanding of our core values and what's most important to us. If love was one of those things growing up, if the idea of creating a home with someone else that was peaceful and caring and supportive, and if you want to exist in a world where your aspirations and dreams actually become reality, where you can be the queen or the king, or you can be the boss in whatever sense, then you want a fierce, healthy love. Because a fierce, healthy love is going to support those dreams becoming a reality. And your ability to experience not only your own emotional, physical, spiritual version of this life in a different new way, but you're going to create something that cannot be created alone. So yes, of course you could do beautiful, wonderful things as a single human being. And I'm certain that the men who talk to you about this were not very happy about that. I know I can speak just from myself right now. Anyone who's creating anything, anyone who's building anything, anyone who believes in legacy, not only in that they've inherited something amazing, both culturally and financially, maybe whatever, but that they want to carry on a tradition and perpetuate a tradition, a new tradition that's worthy of legacy, is going to want to not give up on love. And I hope they don't. Holy smokes. Ladies and gentlemen, do not give up on a healthy love.
I mean, I think you bring up such good points, like of just what love could be. And it's unfortunate because dating right now is not what you described. This harmonious, like peaceful, happy place of meaning. And I think that is part of the problem. And I think you brought up a good point too, that women are becoming financially secure powerhouses that can do it alone. And that's why your article is seeing that men could get left in the dust if they don't step it up a notch. But I think ultimately both men and women don't want that.
Nobody wants that.
No one wants it. exactly. And it's like, I'm glad that you're kind of bringing to light. So I want to go through like some of the main parts of your article. And, you talk about there's a few key things that are contributing to these challenges. So dating apps are one of them, relationship standards, and a skill deficit. So I guess to kick it off, maybe like, how do you think dating apps make it harder for men?
Yeah, just the numbers game, which I already mentioned. That numbers game is fierce. And I don't care where you might measure yourself on the attractiveness scale, physically or the whole total profile, how well you think you've crafted those one-liners, those witty prompts, whatever it is, if you're on Hinge or Bumble or anything else. Which, by the way, I recommend Hinge. I don't recommend Bumble if you're a single man. And we can get into that too. I don't know. You might want to get into that.
We want to hear that. Yeah. So it's usually the opposite for
Is
Bumble.
that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, sugar. Anyway. But yeah, bottom line, you have to craft something that's almost fucking just stellar. You could be the most attractive human being, doesn't matter. The number game alone crushes the spirit of women, okay? Unless you're in Bumble, maybe that's why you like Bumble. But it crushes, right? Because there's just so much coming through that you have to pull off an initial impression, just like any other time in world history. And to be able to pull off that first impression in an emotionally evocative way, which is the only fucking way you're going to stand out unless you're just super fucking hot. You have to be able to actually have the soft skills to be able to initiate a conversation like that, an initial message or anything else, unless you're on Bumble, because then the woman initiates that.
We touched on Michael Kay, who's the head of communications and PR at OkCupid, and he was talking about what women want has dramatically changed. Used to be tall, dark, and handsome. They're financially secure. Like those were the big things that women were going after. And now it's emotional availability, communication skills, more of the soft skills that are different. I think that's actually a really good thing that we're evolving to what we're looking for, because you would argue that in the past, that was just setting us up for vastly unequal relationships and gendered situations. Do you think that's the root of it? That like men alone can't just rely on what they once did and they have to adapt to kind of the new standards? Is that what you're saying with the dating apps, or is it a different thing?
Well, the new standards are across the board. And I just want to take it out of the context of the gender piece, even just to say that if you would work with me in couples therapy, I would be talking to you the same way, regardless, whatever your viewpoint. But the bottom line is this: you have to be able to pull off the soft skills. And the soft skills may have been in some way, shape, or form gendered or whatever in the past, but they can no longer be. You need to be able to understand how in each moment of every day of your life, your thoughts, your emotional experience, and your actions all arise interdependently. You have to be mature enough and responsible enough to recognize that, to be open to potentially, if you need, to figuring out those skills with a professional, a mental health professional, a coach. I don't care where you get it. You can go on TikTok at A Better Love Project and learn everything you need to know about a healthy, fierce love for free. By the way, it's my charity. But the bottom line is you got to get the skills, because the standards have changed. People are not going to settle for things anymore. We already see that. We see 50, 60, 70-year-olds divorcing their partners because they're not happy. Marriages, which for most people who are dating, monogamous marriages is still the goal, are going to get harder and harder and harder as we live longer and longer and longer. That means we need to have better matches from the start. Why the fuck would you choose someone who cannot emotionally connect with you? Why would you choose someone who cannot communicate effectively with you? Why would you choose somebody who does not respond effectively to your bids when you're texting each other before a first date? The standards have changed.
Oh my gosh. It's because we're living longer. I mean, it really is, like you said, because back in the day when the life expectancy was 50 years old, you get married, you pop out a few babies, and then you die. Like, it's pretty fast. You don't have to worry about your relationship or empty nesters. You just die before you have to work on your relationship. And now we see so many people after they become empty nesters having to work on the relationship and then going through divorce. And this is actually such a major pattern in China right now where the divorce rates are skyrocketing, especially since COVID, because the culture really did not see favorably divorce back then. But now because people are living longer, it's just becoming more prevalent and the government doesn't know what to do with it. They're like, what the fuck is happening? So that is actually really interesting that our life expectancy is feeding into our relationship standards. And that's also what's causing this loneliness because now we are taking our time to find our partners and it's very confusing. And the third contributing factor to this is skills deficit. Tell us more about that.
I mean, this is exactly what I think Julie maybe mentioned a little bit of this earlier, those communication skills or the soft skills that we need in life. I mean, but listen, we're not talking about some like strange, rare things. I'm talking about when you get home at the end of the night, giving your wife a kiss and a hug, maybe, or if she's coming home, that when she gets home, you give her a hug and a kiss, that you seek understanding and emotionally validate your partner versus trying to persuade them of your perspective on something. Bringing up issues to one another with gentle startup, like, I feel sad I didn't get a hug this morning. Can you give me one now? Like, if we just learn these simple, formulaic ways, so maybe we've got a solution here for the government out in China. If you just figure out these very core life skills for emotional connection and everybody learned them, life would be so different.
I think though, it's all kind of tying together. It's like our generation too was a byproduct of divorce. Like our parents, outside of China, in the US culture, divorce was the most prominent with our parents' generation. And I think like we saw that like what we've been told with relationships doesn't work and we're wanting better. And part of it's that we're living longer. Part of it's that women can support each other. Like it all plays together. I agree with you that I think this is a universal issue for men and women. It doesn't matter necessarily your gender. It's just, can you adapt and learn the right skills? And again, not every woman has these skills either, but we do know that women read more self-help books. We do know that women listen to more self-improvement podcasts, more relationship podcasts. If you're the guy listening to this right now, you are ahead of the game and
Yes,
you are.
Cheers to you, brother.
And like, that's the thing is though, but I totally agree is like the more I even did this podcast, I feel like my relational skills and my EQ, I think people really value EQ over IQ at this point. Not that they don't value IQ either, but like EQ is something we hear over and over again as a top trait that people desire in a partner. And I think what I'm gathering from you is that like men are not socialized this way. So it's a lot of catch up that needs to happen, a lot of taking ownership. Like how do men start to do this work essentially?
And I'm going to take this out of the context of men for a second because my answer is going to get to that. But there's a lot of conversation in my audience about narcissism, narcissists, et cetera, et cetera. All right. And I don't know, you may have like done a million episodes on narcissists at this point. I don't know.
People love throwing that word around.
We hear people, but I would say that's like challenges the EQ of women in that case to just throw that out each time.
I like that. Okay. All right.
Probably go viral for that saying.
No, I push back on this all the time on my show because I say, hey, listen, people who are narcissistic personality disorders, very small group of people, right? Yeah, they're mostly men. We understand that, but very small group of people. Now, is it the case, and I talked to my audience about this, is it just the case that we have lost connection with skills or maybe never learned them to be able to validate emotions in the first place? And that's the more likely thing.
I see what you're saying. So it's not like necessarily intentional. It's just lack of skill.
And so at the end of the day, the only way that this is going to get resolved is action. And I don't know what the solution is because I started this nonprofit a year and a half ago with the intention of talking to couples. And unfortunately, ends up being 97% of my audience is women, to your point. So I'm not reaching men unless they're angry at me.
Right.
So I don't know what the solution is. You know what I mean?
That's why you're here today, because we have men. We have men here.
Yes. Maybe it is good to reach out to the ones who are angry because maybe they are ready for a change or they are listening at least. But the kind of a gendered statement here is we do have women telling us, I'm just so ahead of the game when it comes to self-awareness and personal development that I find men not really closing the gap who are in my age range. So how do I find the right guys for me who are emotionally equipped to be with me? And so what I'm hearing you say is it's maybe, for anybody in this position should rethink that statement. And it's less about the skills skills that someone has, but more about, are they willing to learn? And do they have the necessary passion to learn?
Yeah, and I think it takes a stance of non-defensiveness. That is the most important thing in any of this. The antidote, in my view, to this sort of narcissism, I'm going to say that in the broader sense, is the antidote to defensiveness. And the antidote to defensiveness is taking ownership for just maybe a little piece of whatever it is that we're hearing, whoever it is that's saying something to us about our place in the context of the issue, whatever that is. Even if we don't agree. We don't even need to not get defensive. Always say, oh, maybe I did that. Tell me more. Wait, maybe I can grow. Tell me more.
Right.
Oh, maybe there's something I can learn. Maybe I can improve. Maybe I can be a better leader. Maybe I can be a better coach. Maybe I can be a better business, whatever. With all of the social skills I'm going to learn on how to love my partner more effectively.
So I think some of it, though, too, I was just thinking like, to get to therapy, usually something needs to happen. A lot of times there needs to be the big breakup or, some other challenge. Maybe it's not even related to love, but just in your personal life that got you there. Maybe the challenge in itself is just that dating isn't going my way.
Yeah.
But I think what's hard is that women have been socialized for so long that like love is the ultimate achievement. Getting
I've
married.
been socialized that way too. I'm there with you. But I know I get you. I don't know. Do you think men truly don't want that fierce, amazing, passionate, sexy, fiery fucking love that we're talking
Absolutely, they want it. But I think this is where I think there might be the disconnect because of the way we've been socialized.
Okay.
Is that like when it doesn't happen, you're just like, oh, I'll just ignore it and focus on the stuff I've been socialized that, equates to success. For women, though, that's like, oh my God, I need to seek out help. I need to listen to the podcast. I need to get the self-help book. It's more of like a fire drill that's happening. Where men, it might just be like, I'm just going to brush it to the side. And, maybe I haven't been on a date in 6 months.
Focus on my career.
Right, exactly. But like the problem, though, with that is that there's less eligible men in the pool. Those men still aren't happy, right? If ultimately deep down, you're right. I do think this is what they desire because who doesn't want a meaningful connection that is going to propel you in life? But I just don't know if it's always as self-aware, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if they knew that if they wait too long, they're going to fuck themselves up, I think they would take action quicker. What do I mean by that? The longer people stay out of the dating pool, avoidance starts to creep up, anxiety, and prioritization then shifts to other things because now I don't even want to be anxious. I don't even want to be uncomfortable.
Right.
I don't want to face rejection. I don't want to face all those things. So time is of the essence, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let another day pass by with these women on dating apps without good choices. Go get some new skills. Use them on Hinge.
I mean, that's a big thing. Biological clock for women. There's not that pressure for men, too.
There's a pressure for me. I'm looking at the situation. I'm saying, okay, I'm 39. I'm going to turn 40. What is it that I want in my life? I told you earlier I was divorced. I was married. I had a fierce love, by the way. That was amazing. It was very meaningful. What do I want in my life? The biological clock is with us as well. We just don't fucking talk about it the same way.
Right.
Maybe that's it.
And we just got to start reshaping the conversation entirely. I don't know entirely how to do it, but I'm looking for someone who is of a certain age because I want the most amount of time loving on her and my children. That's the actual thought that goes through my mind.
So here's another generalization that I also think is somewhat true, is that women, prioritize friendship more for the most part, not all women.
In romantic relationships or generally?
No, just in general. Just like connection with other people is always at the forefront. Like
They're so much more advanced in that regard, may I say?
I feel like
you are more advanced in that regard.
Like there's an SNL skit of like all these women bringing their boyfriends to the dog park, to like the man park, to basically like meet another guy friend.
Them.
And I see it with like my boyfriend, my friend's boyfriends, like everyone. It's like I think it's not everyone, but there is a little bit of different emphasis. And I think part of it is we have an outlet. Like we have the people to talk about this stuff with. Like how do men start to, one, either have those deeper combos if they do have that friend group, or how do they start to find people that they can talk to about this type of stuff?
Yeah, we're talking about a diversity of experience and your exposure to a diverse group of people. If you're hanging hanging out in LA and you're, going to yoga with me or something, and we strike up a conversation after class, we're going to have some kind of, right? It depends on who is around you. And so if you're in a friend group who don't prioritize that, and it's just about functional things, it's not about emotional depth or vulnerability or like, oh, fuck, I'm sad. Can you hang out? Let's go watch a movie together, guy friend. Now, I can tell you, I have one sincere friend that I've had since 7th grade, and he's a guy friend. And I can tell you, there is nothing more rewarding than having a friendship with another man, but it comes with great difficulty. I can tell you that for elder millennials, and probably still. And it's not even that it's not a priority. It's just this is our disadvantage, brothers, if you're listening to this right now. This is our disadvantage, that we need to take action to make up for the disadvantage that we don't have these prioritizations. Because what happens is we then rely too heavily on our spouses or our partners or whatever for all that emotional goodness. But if you can also get that intimacy and closeness from other guys, it'd be great. How are they going to do it? How are they even going to know? How are they even going to know they're missing out on it unless they're listening to your podcast right now? I hope everyone is listening to your podcast.
Let's hold that thought for a quick message.
This episode is sponsored by Via. We all know there are things that can help set the mood in the bedroom, but did you know a little THC could also do that? Yes, Via has developed a unique blend of pleasure-enhancing cannabinoids, libido-strengthening herbs, and a low dose of THC all into one mind-blowing gummy called High Love. This gummy, wow, it will awaken your senses, increase blood flow, and intensify any sexual experience. I've been pleasantly surprised by the High Love gummies because it is just the right amount of THC for me to have a good time without feeling sleepy. And hey, if THC is not your thing, Via also offers a wide array of other gummies without it. And everything legally ships in 50 states with discreet packaging directly to your door. So if you're over 21, you can get 15% off and a free pack of award-winning Dreams THC plus CBN sleep gummies with our exclusive code DATEABLE at viahemp.com. That's VIIAHEMP.com. Let the gummies work their magic. Head to viahemp.com and use the code DATEABLE to receive 15% off and one free sample of their Sleepy Dream gummies. That's viahemp.com and use the code DATEABLE at checkout. Take your passion and pleasure to a whole new level with High Love from Via Hemp. This episode is made possible by Armoire. Armoire makes getting dressed easy. With a clothing rental membership from Armoire, build the perfect wardrobe with brands that are high quality, unique, and recommended just for you. All you have to do is take a 5-minute style quiz and select items from your dynamic, personalized closet. The styles show up at your door in as little as 2 days. Then when you're ready for new clothes, just swap them out. Listen, I live in Southern California. There is absolutely no need for puffer coats or any sort of those winter jackets. But when I travel anywhere else in the world in these cold months, I'm often burdened with the task of getting winter clothes. And now with Armoire, I can just rent my winter wardrobe. It's brilliant. Right now, our listeners can give Armoire a try and get up to 50% off their first month. That's up to $125 off. Just visit armoire.style/dateable. That is armoire.style, spelled ARMOIRE.style/DATEABLE to get up to 50% off your first month and never worry about what to wear again. Try Armoire today.
As you know, I recently left my corporate job and I've been in total recovery mode, all about self-care. One of my new routines is the nighttime shower before bed. There's just something about washing away the day and that reflection that's been super helpful for me. I've been using one of our partners, Osea's Mega Moisture Duo. This combo body oil and body lotion are so freaking incredible. It literally feels like I'm at a spa. I realized that the secret is seaweed and other skin level ingredients that are normally reserved for face products. And that's why I was so excited when Osea became one of our partners. And, we're so grateful for partners like this because one, they keep the show going, but they're also super good for all of our listeners and for our own well-being. So if you want to have that nighttime bliss like I am doing, you can get 10% off your first order site-wide with code DATEABLE at oseamalibu.com. You'll get free samples with every order and free shipping on orders over $60. So head to oseamalibu.com and use the code DATEABLE for 10% off. Let us know which products you end up going with. Share them in social. Super excited to see what you end up choosing.
I feel like we could talk about this for another 10 hours about how there are these roles in dating that are so deeply ingrained in dating culture that it makes it hard for people to break out of the mold. The tropes that I speak of are the guy who's non-committal because he wants to be a bachelor for life, the girl that asks for a commitment after 3 dates because her biological clock is ticking, the nice guy that never gets any girls because there are these fuckboys who are getting all the girls for them. It's these tropes that makes it really hard for men to break out of the shell and say, I actually am not that, or actually she's not that. I hear guy friends talking like this all the time. In fact, my partner and his friends talk like this all the time. Oh, she's just another one of those approaching 40s and, you know, her biological clock is ticking. I'm like, actually, no, your friend is the douchebag who's leading her on to make her think that she is in a relationship, right? So I think it's almost the responsibility is on us, whether you're dating or not, to really call out these stereotypes that are so ingrained in us and say, no, that's not the role that he or she is falling into. In fact, here's a better way of looking at the situation. I hope we can all do that for our friends.
I hope we could give people confidence too that like these are the skills or the traits that women actually want, because I think, you know, sometimes men feel like, oh, it's these, you know, the stereotypical stuff still.
Yeah.
And it's not like the vulnerability, it's not the EQ and all that stuff. But we've also heard before, like Connor Beaton, we've had him on our podcast. He does a lot of men's work, and he's made comments through his kind of research of like women say they want the vulnerable guy, but then if they cry, they get turned off. Like, how do we start to kind of show men it's okay to be this way too?
Yeah, I think we should start from a place understanding that we're all confused. And that's a place of vulnerability, by the way, which is a beautiful place for emotional connection to begin. It's to say, we're all confused. We want, and if you just think about the gender thing, right? We want this. We want freedom, independence. We want choice. We want emotional connection. We want, and we may want something different in different contexts. So let me use the sex I'm a sex therapist in LA. We may want our partners to show up in a particular way if we're making a big decision about how we're going to spend the weekend or whatever, summer. But in a bedroom or whatever, and sexually, we may want our partner to dominate us. So that could be confusing for a man, for instance.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
But it's not about the man's confused. We're all reshaping the norms and the rules so that we can have the kind of love that we want, not somebody else. And if we're communicating what we want from our partner, that's the only thing that matters, really. You know, I mean, I hope that that's the kind of love that I talk about, because that's the kind of love I believe in.
I have hope.
I have hope. I feel like we're at an inflection point too, that the fact that you're stirring shit up for people is a good thing. Like, I think there is something, and I agree. I've heard a lot of straight white men be like, this is bullshit, like all that. But of course, all the women were posting this in our Facebook group being like, this guy figured it out, you know, like but I agree with you. I think that it can't just be that we're saying, okay, men, you don't have the skills. Like, that's not really going to get us to where we want either.
No.
It's this place of understanding that I love this, that we're all fucking confused. Like, that is the best way to put it. And, you know, we might not have all the answers today, but like, we're on this journey to figure it out. Like, how can women support men instead of just, because what we see in our Facebook group is, oh, they did this, I'm out.
Yep.
Like, it's just, there's no conversation, there's no benefit of the doubt. And I get it, because we've been burned before. We don't want to fall for the fuck boy. We don't want to fall for the non-committal guy. Like, all the tropes that Yue was talking about earlier. Like, how do we balance all this and help people out in dating?
Well, first of all, I think it's like up to each of us to show up as our best self in dating, right? So no one is responsible. Like, the women aren't responsible necessarily. And you're not saying this, but let me just make it clear that I think this. Women are not responsible to teach men social skills. And so how they could be supportive is just, I think I understand what you're talking about in terms of this guy's out. You know what I mean? Like, maybe there's a little bit of a hiccup in terms of responding to something that's said, or maybe not getting back in time or something. And that relationship is then foreclosed on too soon. That definitely could happen if there's a history of insecure attachments, if there's a history of abusive relationships, all those things. And it would make total sense that you would feel that way. My hope, my friends, is that you don't have to do anything. You just have to show up as yourself and keep looking for those people that are as close to the match as you want to get. Now, if you listen to Indian Matchmaker on Netflix, she says something like 60%. I would say 80%. You know what I mean? But that's because I'm hopeful, ladies and gentlemen, that I am going to find the person of my dreams. And I'm going to create someone with them. And I'm hopeful about that because I've got 50 years of research that I'm looking at that suggests that there's amazing people. One couple, by the way, John and Julie Gottman, who just celebrated, I think, the 35th wedding anniversary. That's John's third wife, by the way. So
Is
John's,
it really? I never knew
yeah,
that.
John got it right the third time.
No way.
Yeah.
And he created a legacy of love with her.
Wow.
So that's hopeful for all of your listeners, hopefully.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's definitely trends, you know, like there's a trend that sounds so horrible of like raising your boyfriends that women feel like instead of raising children, they have to.
I just twitched. Did you see that?
I know. And I 100% am not telling anyone they should ever do that. Like, I think that might be the worst thing you could do. What I'm hearing from you, though, Greg, is instead of focusing like how to support, like how do you become the emotionally available, communicative, all the things and make this less gendered, and then let the people that are there, like you'll start to be attracted to them. And I think like for me, my partner, I felt that way. As soon as I met him, I'm like, okay, I see it because I know what I'm looking for at this point. And I also let other qualities go, you know, like qualities I thought were really important because the reality is people aren't going to meet everything. Like, you know, the stuff that doesn't matter ultimately, like they're in the right social circle or they dress this way, like things that ultimately don't matter. So I do feel like, yes, we can give people more the benefit of the doubt, but we also can maybe more just focus on becoming the person we want to date and then, you know, letting those people come up.
Well, because we are the trendsetters and women, ladies and gentlemen, if we fucking don't have a clue here, women everywhere in Iran and everywhere else are going to accept only what they're going to accept. And the choice is very simple in my mind because I love women. And as an individual man, I hope to be in a relationship with a woman one day. That I would love to just show up as myself, as the fierce fucking person I am, and my partner to show up as the fierce person she is. And then for us just to champion each other, right? Because now you're setting the trend yourself with the culture and the norms that you define in your own home. When we start thinking about that and what we have control over, you're going to be in a good position, less stressful that way.
Yeah. And it makes it a lot easier than teaching or raising. If you're
God,
teaching or raising, it absolutely builds resentment. And then the person you're raising will become dependent on you for new skills, new knowledge, new learnings. So yes, we can only control our own culture and be the person we want to be and attract the people in our lives. Let's address the elephant in the room before we leave this conversation.
Okay.
The lonely single men out there. They read your article. They're listening to this episode. They're thinking, yep, Greg, you see me. I'm in this spot. Now what? How do I get out of this hell that I feel like I'm in?
To be lonely is no joke. It's a deeply sad place to be. Hopefully a transient thing like most emotional and mood periods. And the most important thing to recognize is do not start to identify with a label that I've been hearing, which suggests you will always be single and celibate, which I think I just heard this incel. I heard this.
Yeah.
Don't identify with some restrictive label that will lead you to a place of more loneliness, more sadness, more disconnection. In this world, we need connection. We, especially men, need each other. We need to be connected to each other in beautiful fucking ways. And we need to build community. The way to do that is to seek out people who are maybe in a different situation than you are. Is there somebody in your community? Is there somebody in your school? Is there a classmate? Is there somebody who maybe they do okay? Why not introduce yourself to that person? Why not become friends? Why not maybe learn some of those skills just by hanging out with the person? Like how to talk about stuff and when things are, and why not hang out with that person and tell them that you're fucking feeling sad? That is how growth is going to happen, is when you recognize, holy shit, I'm a human being confused like Dr. Greg and everyone else. How can I grow? What's available to me? And there's always an option for growth. I don't care where you are. There's always an option for growth, especially now with TikTok. You can visit me at a Better Love Project.
I don't know if TikTok in general is growth, but you're
Maybe
definitely
yours,
consuming.
yeah. Well, this has been such a good conversation. I mean, I have so many takeaways. I think the biggest one is what we said earlier, is that it's okay that we're just confused. We're fucking confused. We're trying to figure it out. Not to say that like having grace for others means that you should lower your standards, but just realize that we're all trying our best here. And instead of like call people in again, you know, like you need to do what works for you. But ultimately that just saying like this person isn't doing this or that, that's not really getting to the core of what we want either. If we want a loving, fulfilling relationship. We had this episode on our podcast called The Lowest Common Denominator, where the guest talked about how she basically succumbed to the lowest common denominator on dating apps of doing the bare minimum pretty much, because people ghosted her, she ghosted them. Or people answered in one word answers, she did the same back to them. So basically, like, I'm going to drop to the worst. Where I think what this conversation is doing is actually helping us rise to the best. The fact that we saw our past generations, their relationships not being fulfilling, and we have a sense of what we're looking for, like that should be a good sign. The fact that your article ruffled some feathers actually means that we're holding people to higher standards. Like you said, an opportunity for us to grow and I hope rise to the top. So that's kind of I think ultimately what we're getting out of this, hopefully, is a better dating environment. But we also need to be that person too. We can't just call people out for not doing it or not knowing. And I think we also need to reshape the priority of love in our lives. Like we talked about earlier, how it's socialized, and it can be really hard if you have no good examples of love. Like I even know for myself, like my relationship now, it's beyond what I ever even thought was possible because it wasn't the relationships I had when I was dating. And it's so easy to be like, dating is so painful. Like why even prioritize this? But how do you start to imagine the relationship you want? And instead of succumbing to the lowest common denominator and doing the stuff that's just like going with dating culture, like pave your own path and like hold that standard, because I think that's ultimately the fire that we need to like seek help and get that growth.
There's an amazing quote by Grace Lee Boggs who said, "We are the leaders we've been waiting for."
Yeah.
And I think that's the case in our relationships. We are the ones we've been waiting for to set the new trend for the kind of emotional connection that we need. And if we do it now, ladies, we can figure it out. 50, 100 years, it'll all be worked out.
Yeah, and I think this message is for both. I think women have at their advantage that we've been socialized this way, that we have the support system. So I think we're a little ahead. Absolutely. But I do think everyone can become more emotional, like have a higher EQ and better communication. Like this is across the board.
No reason not to. There's absolutely no reason
if
not
nothing
to.
else will just set you apart from the other people. You could play There's No Matches. Here you go, right?
Here's the thing, though. Even after reading your article, I would say something that really jumped out at me. My big takeaway is that this is a humanity issue and not just a single man issue. And for so long, I feel like we look at these issues in silo for that specific group. Oh, women should work on that. Oh, men should work on that. The gay community should work on that. Black people should work on that. We're finally getting to a stage where we see, okay, we all need to do better for this group. So after reading this article and after this conversation, it makes sense that yes, there exists more lonely single men out there. We as a society, as a community, need to be better for them. We need to help each other and not just let them figure it out on their own. And this plays so much into dating because I know so many people out there are like, well, men need to get their shit together. I've said that many times. Men should get their shit together. It's not my problem. I'm not here to teach them, not here to be their mom. It isn't our problem in terms of teaching, but it is our responsibility to also support and show empathy and really be there for each other. So that's kind of like my major takeaway from this is we all need to be part of the solution here. And the other takeaway I have is we got to surround ourselves with the right people. If we keep surrounding ourselves who play into these stereotypes, these dating tropes, bad dating behavior, that's all we're going to see as a norm. Even if we don't feel like we don't belong there. But if we can surround ourselves with people that we, like you said, have a situation or feel like they have some stuff figured out. Nobody has all their shit figured out, but has some of their shit figured out. Let's put ourselves in their orbit and really let that just be part of us instead of us trying to seek that knowledge.
Go to yoga with Greg. He's there to give you enlightened words. But there were so many times that we'd be like, this is a stereotype of men. men and you're like, I'm not that way, which means that a lot of people aren't, but the way that our society perceives it is a certain way. So I think for women, again, like you said, Yue, like it's not directly affecting us, but it is. If that's who you're trying to date, then it is affecting. So it's like maybe the takeaway for women is how do you start to unlearn some of these tropes and look at the person as a human being?
And stop fantasizing about the commune you're going to build with all your girlfriends, which is what I've said at least 5 times in the last month. Like, we don't need men. They're becoming obsolete. I'm just going to be in a commune with all my girlfriends, which sure, could happen.
If that's what you truly want. Sure.
But that's not what I truly want. I do still want love with a man. So good to know. Good to know.
My face hurts because I'm smiling so much.
Well, we did say that we'd plug Greg too to see if there's any listeners that have resonated. Greg is single in LA.
Greg is single and ready to mingle. He likes to go to yoga. He likes to talk about love and feelings. He has really cute sweatshirts that he can share.
God. How are you still single, Greg? I don't get it.
Putting our feelers out there to all of our listeners who are in the LA vicinity.
Cheers. May the universe conspire in my favor.
And I guess for non-romantic reasons, how can people find you?
Maybe perhaps more importantly. Yeah, I would love folks to come just hang out with us at A Better Love Project on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube and just learn some soft skills, figure out how to ask for things gently and some dating stuff. We do some dating stuff there too, but you've got all your needs on the dating front covered if you're listening to this podcast right now.
We need to follow you on TikTok because I feel like my brain just goes to mush on TikTok. So I feel like this is like the good side of TikTok.
Yeah, we actually need some knowledge.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Greg. We're so glad that we had you and we went deeper than the article. This has been such a good conversation. I know, hopefully inspiring, not scary for anyone that's feeling this way as a single man. And then hopefully also uplifting and empathy based for anyone that's trying to date.
Wonderful. We also want to thank our listeners for listening and supporting us. Definitely check out Greg's content while you're looking at our content or listening to our content. You can find us on YouTube now. It's Dateable Podcast, where you can find us, on all the social media handles are all Dateable Podcast. More importantly, if you want to love each other more fiercely, give us a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. That is loving us fiercely, and we will
5
love
stars.
you back fiercely.
Put it out to the universe. 5 stars.
Yeah, it's a 5 F, fierce. F, they're both Fs, our two favorite F words.
There's other things, other F words out there, but we'll stop now.
And then we will end the episode here on that very high note, wrapping up this episode. Stay dateable!
The Dateable Podcast is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. Want to continue the conversation? First, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter with the handle @DateablePodcast. Tag us in any post with the hashtag StayDateable, and trust us, we look at all of those posts. Then head over to our website, dateablepodcast.com. There you'll find all the episodes as well as articles, videos, and our coaching service with vetted industry experts. You can also find our premium Why series where we dissect, analyze, and offer solutions to some of the most common dating conundrums. We're also downloadable for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Overcast, Stitcher Radio, and other podcast platforms. Your feedback is valuable to us, so don't forget to leave us a review. And most importantly, remember to stay dateable.